Good morning and welcome to the second day of the second week in the online platforms market inquiry. Today we're shifting to delivery platforms, which will occupy us today and tomorrow. Today we have in the morning Driver Foods, Buzz Delivery, and Sisters on the Move. And in the afternoon we have Uber Eats and Quench. Tomorrow morning we have Paarl Eats, We Dash, and the Restaurant Association of South Africa. And in the afternoon we have Mr. D. As this is a new area for the public as well, I'm going to ask Mr. Tsegofatso Radinku from the technical team just to talk through the kind of issues that we picked up in terms of food delivery and just introduce this new platform area before we listen to some of the participants who've come to the public inquiry.
Thank you, Chair. I will focus on three key areas of further statement of issues, namely the delivery platform landscape and trends, platform competition, business user competition and treatment, which also include SMEs and historically disadvantaged individuals. In terms of platform landscape and trends, the online intermediation delivery platform operations can be broadly delineated between food delivery from restaurants and other store delivery categories, including grocery, alcohol, and pharmacy. The COVID pandemic has seen a large increase in online restaurant delivery orders by customers, especially in the higher levels of lockdown, where restaurants were prevented from doing sit-down or they only operated at half capacity. Despite the massive growth in restaurant food delivery, the preliminary evidence suggests that there has not been a material change in the number of competitors or the market structure. Mr. Delivery and Uber Eats still account for most of the restaurant delivery through online platforms when measured by number of orders and food value, with both platforms realizing material growth over the period. In fact, some recent entrants have even closed despite the market growth, and others have not expanded their reach materially during the pandemic. In respect of groceries and other delivery categories, the pandemic has seen a growing number of consumers opting for store delivery to reduce social contact. This has seen the major national grocery chains all invest in improved online delivery service. In some cases, this has been achieved through national chain or retailers acquiring an existing online grocery platforms, then rebranding it. The grocery store category, it appears to be higher cost one relative to restaurant delivery due to the need for some in-store shoppers or staff to collate the order for delivery. Moving on to platform competition and some issues that are emerging there. In the restaurant delivery category, competition between platforms take place to both sign up restaurant and to draw in customers to place orders. There are feedback effects within the category, as the number of restaurants is important to consumers, given that variety and convenience are among the most important factors for consumers making use of delivery platforms. Customer reach may influence whether restaurants sign up on a platform. In addition, good platform technology and an effective driver delivery system are important for consumers and repeat use on the platform. On the restaurant side, explicit exclusivity clauses with restaurants do not appear to be a prominent feature of these delivery markets, with only few instances identified and typically on a limited duration, although we know that these are with some national retailers or national chain restaurants. Whilst restaurants may multi-home as a result, it appears that there is a resistance to listing on many available platforms. It is not entirely clear yet as to the reasons for such resistance. Resistance may stem from paying multiple monthly fixed costs of using platforms, the difficulties in integrating multiple distribution channels at the restaurant, or incentives to drive more business through a channel, such as reward with lower commission rates or promotions. Resistance to multi-homing is seen to inhibit entry and expansion, especially where restaurants are popular. For instance, it is evident that national fast food chains feature prominently in customer orders, and small domestic delivery platforms have indicated that these chains are not willing to contract with them. On the consumer side of the market, there is also the ability to multi-home. As a result, marketing expenditure is a prominent cost to drive customers to the platform. Marketing takes the form of brand and awareness marketing, search marketing such as Google AdWords, and most prominently targeted new and active eater promotions directed to the consumer through app or emails. These promotions can take form of free delivery, meal price reduction, or free spend. Many of the promotions seem to be sponsored by the platform itself, but platform also incentivize restaurants to promote their platform and offer promotions through the platform. The incentive may be in a form of reduced commission or enhanced orders through more prominent display positions. Currently, it is not clear whether the commitment to promotions on one platform may limit the extent of promotions undertaken by a restaurant on the other platform, thus resulting in other platforms having to fund promotions themselves to a greater extent. Smaller platforms have indicated that the extent of either promotions by large platforms particularly are unsustainable without deep capital backing to support losses and pose a significant barrier to entry and expansion. Excessive promotions may be why perhaps some food delivery platforms are loss-making. In terms of the price parity, it appears that there are some platforms that have concluded some historical pricing parity. So historical pricing parity clauses were concluded in contracts requiring that restaurant would not make menu pricing on a particular platform higher than the restaurant price or sold through other food delivery apps. The inquiry understands that for some platforms, this is no longer the case, especially for the recently concluded contract. But the inquiry is still interested in understanding what the restaurant actual understanding and practice is with respect to historically concluded contracts, as it is unclear if restaurants are necessarily aware of the change and will price differently even if they are aware. If there is uniform pricing, then it appears that eater promotions are the only way means to compete on price rather than through commission levels, which may encourage excessive promotions. Over and above the historical pricing, we note that some platforms also still maintain the price, the parity pricing. The inquiry is still interested to understand the rationale for such, how and its implication on competition. The above discussed market features may explain why smaller platforms have not been able to take advantage of the market growth and why a number of these platforms have exited in recent years. In terms of business user competition and treatment, a notable feature of restaurant delivery platforms is the differentiation in the commissions charged to different business user segments, namely international chains, national chains, and independent restaurants. Independent restaurants are typically charged substantially higher commission relative to the fast food chains. Platforms cite the order volumes that these chains bring as informing this differential treatment, as well as the reduced cost of loading the listing. This differentiation is fairly unique to the delivery platforms, with differentiation uncommon in most other platform types, even where larger business may generate more transaction volume. The exception is online classifieds. In some platform categories, SMEs are charged lower commission fees. The inquiry thus need to get a good understanding of the reason for such differentiation, the essentiality of such differentiation for the business model, and the impact the differentiation has on the participation of SMEs and HDPs restaurants that are subjected to higher commission fees. Higher commission fees may impact on participation through either lower order volumes from the higher menu pricing or lower margin from restaurants, this smaller restaurant absorbing higher commission fees, or may have a limited impact. Higher commission fees may also be used to support lower commission fees charged to to larger restaurant chains, and in this way impact on delivery platform competition. As with many other platform types, delivery platforms do provide scope for influencing the search ranking and discoverability of a restaurant on the app or the website. Search is typically restricted to a delivery radius around the customer location as a filter. Thereafter, the search will be impacted by delivery factors such as distance, time, and fees, the contextual factors such as the type of the meal, time of the day availability, and the restaurant performance like rating. However, display prominence will also be impacted by promotional offers, paid advertising placement, and premium ranking position purchases, whereby a restaurant can pay for position on the result list. Whilst promotions are typically labeled to draw in customers, there is no consistency in practice of labeling sponsored ranking across different platforms. At this stage, the inquiry has limited information on the participation in such promotional programs across restaurant types and the impact on discoverability and order placement. The inquiry is interested to understand whether independent restaurants do tap into this opportunity or whether they are more frequently used by restaurant chains. A review of the terms and conditions contained in the business user contracts indicate that there are some areas where the practice needs to be understood better to assess the fairness. This includes an understanding of which party may have more control over the risk identified in the case of wrong orders or food returns. And lastly, there appear to be no participation. No participation appear to have any specific no participants appear to have any specific programs to support independent or HDP restaurant. And in fact, preliminary evidence suggests that the practice seems to be the opposite, namely subjecting them to worse terms than larger restaurant chains. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Radinku. We have a slight change in the program. The first participant is going to be Buzz Delivery, and we have Heather Feltes and Irvin Bogopa, as I understand, joining us virtually. So I would invite them now into the virtual hearing. Welcome, Heather. I don't know if your colleague is also joining us.
Hi, James. Unfortunately, not now, but that's okay. We can continue.
All right, Heather. So this is public hearing. It's being streamed off on YouTube. Just so you're aware, because if there is any confidential information, then please don't traverse that in the public hearing. And if you need to come back to us with any answers that do involve confidential information, you're welcome to do that at a later stage.
Sure.
So I believe you do have a presentation, so I'm going to invite you to share that presentation with us and
All
then
right.
to take us through it, and then the panel and the technical team may have questions for you.
Thanks. I'm just looking for the share option. Sorry, forgive me, I'm a bit lost here. I'm trying to find, it's open share tray.
Heather, I believe it's the white block with the arrow that you click on to share.
Okay, so I'm just going to share. Just a moment. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm just going to share my screen. Just a moment. Sorry. 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 Yes, yeah, I've gone in there. I'm now clicking on the screen share. Let me see. Oh, there we go. I find it now. And it should be open.
We don't have it yet.
All right. I'm looking for, oh, there it is. Okay. All right. Let me know when you see it.
We do, so you can put it on slideshow mode.
Okay, it's on slideshow mode.
I think we're just seeing the PowerPoint presentation within the PowerPoint application at the moment.
Okay. Let me go out from here. And, okay, let's see. Slideshow. Is that working for you?
Not yet. I mean, we can still proceed on this basis if you're having difficulty.
All right. Yeah, I think let's continue if that's okay with you. You can see the screens.
That's absolutely fine. Please go ahead, Heather.
Okay.
And we could just, yeah, I don't want to constrain you, so take the time you need. But if we can keep it under sort of 20 minutes, that would be great.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks so much. All right, I think just as introduction, I'm Heather Feldhead, the director for the Buzz Delivery. It's 100% woman-owned business. My background is in industrial consulting.
Sorry, Heather,
left corporate to learn how.
You're breaking up at the moment, so we're missing a bit of your speech.
Okay, thank you. I'll try and speak a little slower, perhaps. Let's see. My network should be stable. This load shedding is having lots of fun with us. You're welcome to stop me, and I'll just continue from where I'd left off.
It seems okay now. So
all right.
We understand the challenges of load shedding. That's why we've had to push you up the order.
Thank you. All right. So my history is studies in industrial psychology and sociology. I've worked in human resources, software development, and consulting. I'd left corporate to learn how to run business, and had bought a small delivery business, as we now know it as an Uber or a Mr. D, back in the day, approximately 10 years ago. At the time, I was competing very enjoyably with Mr. Delivery in the Pretoria space. I became the largest franchisee of my brand in the country. So I had clearly mastered the skills back then. I've been running my own business now for over 10 years. And Buzz was born around 4 years ago, where I had realized that in order to expand and grow, I needed to develop a footprint nationally in order to satisfy the needs of the national franchise brands. In order to do this, I could adopt a typical franchise model, but given that this was becoming more of an e-commerce space and that a focus on technology was becoming more prominent, it didn't make sense to franchise. It made more sense to license and develop. And my passion and my skills have been kind of zoned in that way also. So it was born to then develop a concept or a business model that could be replicated and taught to others in order to run their businesses independently, but with the support of technology. So I think my inclusion in this process is very much appreciated, especially when it comes to my vision and my values, and as far as how this should grow here in South Africa. So at about the same time that I had developed the Buzz brand, Mr. D had received some money internationally, I believe, to digitize and start developing their ordering platforms. And Uber Eats had just come into town. I wasn't too concerned at the time, simply because they had created a market, and I was quite happy to move within the slipstream of that market, because it still allowed space. Little did I know that it would consume pretty much every piece of that pie, and it would leave myself and the people that we are trying to develop in the space without any pie or any space for maneuvering. So the inquiry comes welcomed, and I want to share with you just very basically, in line with your terms of reference, my view on this, if that's okay. So how I've seen this industry and what I've seen over the last 10 years is that there are three main pillars to the success of a business, like a replication, I suppose, of a Mr. Delivery or an Appetite or an Order In, the good old-fashioned brands that existed before the digitization, or as people would call it, the disruption. And it's the one pillar is that of online marketing, which is why I like that it was focused on as a separate investigation, as well as the online ordering, which comes into play with your intermediary platforms and the focus on how they operate. And lastly is that of the successful delivery. And I know that the investigation is not focused much on the gig economy, because that falls within a different space, but there is still a major impact on the success of these independent SMEs when you look at delivery strategy and how that forms part of their business. And our main focus is building economy through delivery. So if we had to look at the trends for online marketing, data has become the new currency. Without data, you really you're working in the dark.
Sorry, Heather, can I just ask you to move your slide presentation on? I think you're on slide 2 now. Is that right? Just for the benefit of the public. If you're moving to slide 2, just maybe move on in your presentation so the public can also see that.
All right, I've moved on. I think there might just be a delay. Are you on to slide 2, search and social digital media as an SME?
We can only see slide 1, your introductory slide currently. I don't know if you can click on the left-hand side on the second slide.
I have on my screen, it's showing the second slide. It says trend online marketing.
I mean, continue to talk. We've at least got the presentation, so if there's some delay, I'm sure it'll come through. I don't want to interrupt you.
Thank you. All right. Please, if it hasn't come through in a minute, just prompt me again. I don't mind. So one needs to consider all three pillars, and I've started with the online marketing. And as I've mentioned, data is virtual currency. And your typical social media platforms work from data, using algorithms to manipulate and take advantage of the data that's available. So your SMEs don't necessarily have readily available data, yet the platform provides that, which is a great leveraging factor. Owning your virtual space in business versus a brick and mortar, there's obvious cost differences. It's imperative that we have our own virtual space in the form of media profiles and websites. Search engine optimization and the knowledge of how that works can definitely leverage an SME in as far as traffic and reach versus the typical footfall that you would find in a supermarket, for instance. And what's great is with data, you can control that traffic, but that's again dependent on spend. Platform algorithms are those unseen a virtual intelligence where systems are configured in such a way, or platforms are configured in such a way that it appeals to certain trends of human behavior. And as much as we speak about being in the fourth industrial revolution, I think we've shifted from fourth to fifth very quickly, because we're now in a very virtual space where logic is applied digitally and not necessarily manually. So it's a combination of the two. Paid manipulation of data. So for these SMEs, as much as online marketing is a lot easier, and it's something that you won't need to, for instance, step out and distribute flyers, it's a lot more comfortable in how we approach our audiences. But it's quite expensive. And it does make reach easier, but one needs to consider the cost involved in that and the time taken. Entertainment platforms are great marketing platforms, and smart marketeers will combine the entertainment aspect with their message. And of course, one needs to consider the interconnectedness of the web and how these algorithms and virtual reality alter what it is we see, both on mobile and via the internet in our searches. So there's a lot of science involved in these platforms that can either leverage an SME, but also become a barrier to an SME if there is a lack of knowledge, if there is a lack of or funds, and a lack of access to the information that is relevant to their business. So if we take a look quickly at the barriers for online marketing, one, as I've mentioned, is access to the data, but also access to these platforms. Whether it be, for instance, I was mentoring and coaching one of our affiliates whom you're going to be listening to in about an hour or so. And we couldn't make connection for simple reason that network is bad and there's load shedding, and there's access to data is very difficult. Access to platforms are difficult because of our infrastructure. Capital for virtual space to own your own e-commerce platform, the cost involved in developing that and maintaining it. Understanding virtual relevance in online business, and what products are easily sold online versus others that are not, in as far as services also, or accessible. Knowing what systems or platforms that work for you as a business, as an SME, knowledge and resource to pay for the manipulation of that data. Access to online markets. The market is currently dominated by first-to-market platforms, and those first-to-market platforms would be in our space where we operate in the restaurant industry would be your Mr. Delivery and your Uber platforms. I understand that Bolt is now starting to make more of headway in Cape Town and coming up here to Gauteng, which might split that pie a little, opening up a few gaps for more players in the market. Where is the market now? Markets are constantly changing and evolving. It's an understanding of how to read data, the development of content, and competing with content creators in as far as budget. And then most importantly, in the online marketing space is the conversion to sales. It's all good and well having our presence on all of these platforms, but unless we know how to convert that to a sale, that skill is required. And then, of course, social media platforms have their own built-in intermediating services, like Facebook, for instance, with their own markets, securing their own trade markets. Without having to leave the platform, you can sell your products in a social media platform and a marketing platform. That is everybody still with me? Are you guys on the page of intermediating platforms?
We are here. Your slide presentation doesn't appear to be moving forward. But I think just
Oh dear.
just continue because you know, we've got it as the panel, and we'll make it available on our website for the public afterwards. But at least we're
Oh,
hearing
thank you.
you
All
very
right.
clearly, so that's great. That's the most important.
All right. Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right. So now we're moving on to intermediating platforms. So I had to touch on the marketing because it plays a very big role. If you're going to be participating or placing your business on an intermediating platform, it's inevitable that you're going to have to market digitally. You have to understand the internet space and how to run business and how to market your business outside of the traditional forms. So when we look at the virtual windows as an SME, one needs to consider that unless we future-proof our businesses and know what platforms are available to us, we're going to fall by the wayside. There is space for traditional markets and traditional forms of selling, but we're very quickly going to fall behind in as far as trade nationally or internationally. Exclusivity is not an option, it's a risk. So any intermediating platform that requires you to exclusively place your product on their platform, I believe is risky. And it's, in my view, bullisome and limiting your potential as a business. I would never recommend that. And if there are platforms out there, this should be regulated from a competition perspective. Understanding the platform markets, who are your customers and who subscribe. So when looking at these platforms, do they make public what the consumer makeup is? Do they provide the SMEs an idea of what customers form part of their subscription or subscribed pool of customers? And also, what access do these SMEs have to market with the product they have? It's knowing the percentage of what percentage of your business that can rely on platforms to remain sustainable. And I think we all fall into the trap of wanting to place our full business on the platform without looking at what is sustainable for the business in the long run and how much of your business should be derived through these platforms versus traditional means. What comes first, the product or the platform? The chicken and egg scenario. Do we have to have a product first, or shall we look for a platform and then start sourcing the product? And for a lot of SMEs, the challenge here is that unless you can move products, you don't have access to the prices from suppliers that you would otherwise have had. So that startup cost is quite significant, and it's a barrier to entry. But at the same time, you have a platform that allows you to move product. So that helps then to move product to a basic level where negotiations can start taking place with suppliers. So it's a matter of asking what first and when. Timing is everything. Price to customer. It's very difficult. It's a definite challenge for an SME because they cannot derive the pricing from suppliers that the bigger brands would. One needs to consider that their price to customer may be higher on these platforms than your larger brands. And then staying in the driving seat of your brand. The platform is a vehicle, it's not a destination. If you are running your business, and this has always been a concern to me, and we'll talk about the barriers now, who owns your brand? Is it you that's driving your brand forward on multiple platforms, and traditionally in that you control the dynamic of your brand? Or are the platforms controlling the dynamic of your brand? And that forms part of your business strategy and your business plan moving forward. So this is my advice to SMEs that are looking at moving on to intermediating intermediating platforms. But what are these barriers? First of all, the intermediating platforms become gatekeepers to your customers. They choose how and when and what you see, and as far as customer information. In fact, if one looks at the value of your business is made up of assets, but it's also made up of your customers. It's your clients. So if you had to sell your business one day, what portion of those customers are yours, would you say? And this becomes a sustainability question. It also becomes a risk question. If you do not have access to understand who your customers are and what value your business is, it starts to change the dynamic of how we define business. Owning your customer, I've just mentioned the value of your business, and what is the customer loyalty? Is the customer loyalty to your brand and to your product, or is the customer loyalty to the platform? And as much as the platform are aggregators that provide a system and they provide a mechanism to sell product, it encroaches very, very clearly on the customer loyalty. The loyalty programs are often built into these platforms, but does it encourage loyalty to the individual business brands, or does it encourage loyalty to the platform itself? I've worked in the restaurant industry now for, as I'd mentioned, over 10 years. Prior to that, in the hospitality space. And I can tell you that in the beginnings of an Uber and a Mr. D digitizing and Uber moving into the space and then building the market the way they have, in the beginning, we started to see a transition of sit-in customers in your restaurants to that of delivery by about 10, 15, then 20% over the first 2 years. Thereafter, we could see a drastic increase of deliveries versus sit-in customers within the restaurant brands and large franchise brands over the next 2 years. Where COVID hits, it drove the market toward deliveries and still has sustained large percentages. This has become huge risk for the restaurant brands in that who owns that customer? Who owns that customer information and who owns that data? As a turnover based or as any business requires turnovers, one needs to understand what the cost implications are that, for instance, to a restaurant, where we have turnover-based royalties, we have turnover-based rentals, and how that increases costs not just within the platform, but also to other aspects of business. One needs to understand who is your business partner and can you trust them? These intermediary platforms, as great as what they are in providing access to market, it comes to a point when one needs to analyze what bargaining power have you given to the platform versus what you own as a business. And I think that's where that balance comes in from a competition perspective. At what point do you start losing power within your business to maintain, grow, and expand? What conditions do they have for entry, and have they made this public? I run also a franchise type business where we have multiple brands that make use of these platforms. And on one of these platforms, they allow me entry with these multiple brands, but on the other, they would not allow me entry. And when querying the policy behind their allowing access, I was told that it's policy. And I said, well, that's great, but then let me understand what risk you are covering in that policy so that we can rationalize whether my brand's entry on your platform is justifiable or not. And I was blocked and told that it's just policy, and should I wish to question it, it's not going to happen because there are too many levels within their bureaucracy or their structures to allow for conversation like that with an SME. Or they didn't mention particularly with an SME, but with myself in particular. And I would really like to open those conversations. Who is making the decision? Where is this policy? How is it documented? And on what basis are they blocking entry of certain SMEs versus others? And I'm still yet to receive answers on this. Legality of trading terms and the risk it places on the sustainability of your business. I think we're all familiar with one trading platform or intermediary platform that has currently changed contracts for various reasons. But one of the main aspects that have been concerned to me for the restaurant industry, for instance, is that that was the liability, or not the liability, should I say, the responsibility of the store owner or the restaurant, and not of that of the platform or the aggregator. And very few businesses actually read these contracts to understand what the implication was for them as a business for not paying VAT on delivery fees. And many of them were of the opinion and understanding that this VAT was paid over by the aggregator, and were not educated in the space of what their legal compliance requirements were, having contracted with this platform. So that, for instance, has placed many of these businesses at risk. And should there be audit going further, I really pray and hope that they have, in fact, cover all bases from a VAT perspective. Ranking and rating of your business. Is there transparency on all platforms to say that those criteria are, first of all, relevant to your business? And also, how does the algorithm work? What is the logic behind the rating and ranking? If we understand the policy behind the ranking and the rating, we can understand as an SME whether this is going to be in our benefit or to our detriment, because these are the decisions we need to take when selecting what platforms to use. So the platforms have their own marketing modules also, which allow you to manipulate the market that they've secured through their own marketing means. And you may manipulate the information and the data that exists within that platform, but it comes at a cost. So much like you have your marketing platforms that allow for a trading or a marketplace for selling of goods, so you also have your intermediary platforms that allow for marketing. So there's a crossover in these platforms between one and the other. And then one needs to understand that conglomerates are offering ridiculously good deals for the consumer, which is great. But what it does is it also trains the consumer to look out only for specials and deals. And this is not sustainable for SMEs. Cutting the profits, the larger organizations cutting their profits to maximize market share in competition with each other, which are really two monopolies in the restaurant space at the moment, that being your Mr. Delivery and your Uber. In this competition between the two of them for market share, they've closed the gap for SMEs through this aggressive marketing technique of specials and deals, and making it very difficult for SMEs to afford these very same opportunities to the consumer. Moving on from that, some more boundaries or barriers. What criteria determines your exposure to the market? And is this transparent? Recently, having joined one of the platforms, I was given the opportunity to make use of functionality that some or most other businesses don't have access to. And when changing the settings, I found very quickly that my market opened up quite significantly. And having an understanding of software development, having an understanding of the logic that is applied when developing a software platform like this, I am very aware that functionalities change the logic of how one is exposed to the market. But I would like that to be transparent to SMEs so that we can make the most of the platform. Contract law in South Africa is much like going into a franchise. You're subject to all the terms in that contract that you sign. The legal costs make it impossible to contest. So once you've signed that contract as an SME, do you understand the implications or the terms and the fairness of the terms within that contract? Because as an SME versus a larger entity, the contest is not even a question. And I think there's some ethic perhaps that needs to be applied by these organizations to at least take into consideration the fairness to SMEs. And I think that's what this investigation is touching on. Fair access to functionality and features, as I've mentioned earlier, is this inclusionary or exclusionary? It would seem that certain functionalities are advertised versus others that are kind of shifted under the rug. And only on further investigation and prodding, and me being the personality I am, to ask, but what can I do about this? And can I add that? Do we start to realize that there are additional features or functions that are not initially exposed to the regular business? And I think we need to understand what the full option or catering is versus the larger brands that are given these options as almost buy-ins to bring them on board. SMEs are not charged the same commissions as larger franchises. This has been my experience, having worked in the industry, having spoken to multiple restaurants. It's quite clear that there's no particular standard in as far as how they apply these costings. And I'm finding that more SMEs are charged the higher rates, anything between 20 and 30%. And the SMEs are charged in the higher region versus the larger franchise brands, obviously because the brand is what draws the consumer, and it's in the best interest of the intermediating platform to incorporate the larger brands. But do they make enough space for the smaller brands is the question. Then service and support are critical to SMEs, the same as large brands. So in large brands, you have structures internally that allow for, when I say large brands, sorry, let me clarify. We're speaking about large franchise brands in this instance. They often have a support structure or system within their processes that support the franchisees. SMEs are individuals without that kind of support structure. And yes, they've had a choice. They've had a choice to start on their own or buy into a franchise. But the intermediating platforms, are they providing sufficient training, sufficient access to support for SMEs to enable them this in the same way that larger brands are enabled? And therefore allowing them better and easier access to the market that exists on the platform. Who defines and monitors the regulation criteria for product and service standards is a question in my mind. And how is it applied fairly? So for instance, when being blocked with my brands wanting to enter onto one of these platforms, one of the reasons given was that I was told as an SME, I need to have a retail space in order to have entry onto the platform. I said to them, but this is virtual business. What is the point of having an online platform if I now need to incur brick and mortar costs as well? What are the service standards? What are those regulatory standards that are required from you as a platform of me so that I can assure you that those standards are met? Do you have assessments? Do you have criteria that you can send to me so that it can be fairly applied? I'm working from an office space. How does that differ from a shop front? And why would that make any difference to my access to that platform? So these are the arguments that are being had. And I have no doubt that your SMEs are venturing into this space for the reasons that we don't want or can't afford the brick and mortar expense of running a business. The next point is that platform has full access to your business IP and detail. What stops the platform from replicating your concept or your product or sharing it with someone else? So in conversation with a restaurateur not so long ago, I was posed with a question, and they said to me, Heather, why is it that I should concern myself with being on this platform when they could tomorrow decide for themselves what it is they want and simply do it themselves? And that is a very good point. What protects the SME from the sharing of information with regard to their IP? And when I speak about IP, you've got to understand that in order to be on these platforms, and yes, it's made public, the detail of your products, but also the business model that you're applying is exposed to. So SMEs need to be cautious as to what they are exposing on the platforms, and how secure they are. Not now, maybe in 10 years when the platforms decide that perhaps they can make more money selling the products themselves. So I'm moving on now from the intermediary platforms, the barriers and the trends to that of deliveries. And I know that in the terms of reference, they've said, look, the gig economy is falling within a different space, but I felt that it's worth a mention. The gig economy and the aspect of drivers and deliveries impact on SMEs and e-commerce. On-demand delivery, SMEs require on-demand delivery to remain competitive. E-commerce without delivery is like eggs without bacon. What is the point? This is where the costs sink the ship. And that's simply because the costs with the larger entities in competition with each other have not only driven costs down for consumers, but they've driven the costs up for delivery drivers. Conglomerates have dominated the delivery space and driven the cost of deliveries up beyond what SMEs can afford. Competition is offering free delivery, whereas an SME needs to cover those costs and ensure that that delivery driver is earning his fee or her fee. Apply driver absorption techniques. This is what's happening is during the peak periods at month end and certain times of the year, what these platforms do is they open up application for drivers just prior the peak need for drivers and absorb the drivers within that market, making it very difficult to secure the service delivery for small, medium enterprise because they cannot compete in the amount of money that these drivers are earning. And of course, there's no regulation with regards to a gig driver and the gig driver world. So in a nutshell, if we had to look at the three pillars and we look at solutions, ultimately we can talk about barriers until we're blue in the face. But at the end of the day, there needs to be a few factors to be considered. One is knowledge about this new world of business. Knowledge about adapting one's mindset to how business is run and how it can be run. The second is the cost. Where are SMEs deriving funding to develop software that can compete? Where are they developing where they're deriving funding for the marketing expense required to compete in a space where you have two main players in the on-demand delivery market? It seems almost impossible to gain entry. And how do we open these gaps? How do we open these slipstreams again to allow for a greater variation of businesses in the space that could possibly offer a lesser cost to the stores, could offer a lesser cost to the consumer, because competition ultimately drives the costs up for running these businesses. And these SMEs don't have international funds to throw at a market that is already absorbed. So what we're looking at also is a support mechanism in as far as software. So I have developed a software from my own business. It is a white labeled software, and it is a multi-store software with the capability for online payments and the logistics and workflows that enable the delivery to take place also. And I've made it white labeled on purpose. I've made it white labeled so that multiple businesses can utilize with their own brands the very same technology that one can expect from an Uber or Mr. D, give or take some functionality, because one needs to remember that the development of the software is very expensive and requires a lot of insight and IP into this industry. I believe that I've applied as much as I can into the software to at least get SMEs into the market at a minimal cost, and enable them or leverage them into this market with technology that they don't necessarily have funding or access to. We've also developed partnerships with both for-profit and non-profit entrepreneurial development entities. We have Rhapsodize, and we have also our Distribution X, which are contributors to the business models and the mentoring programs that we've put in place for affiliates. I'm currently developing and coaching, and I have the privilege of working with 5 lovely young Black woman-owned businesses to enable them to understand not just the technology, but also the industry and how to penetrate certain industries like the restaurant industry, to gain confidence through reputation that I've developed over years, but imparting that on others to develop a national footprint. And I would love to grow that further. So we want to build a larger economy through the creation of employment and creation of further businesses utilizing our models and IP. The affiliates are coached and supported by the Buzz Delivery Network. They have shared network resources like software, marketing, and training. And we also provide the business plans and financial application information for funding, where and how the funding becomes available. So going back to our 3 pillars of success, it's never let me down. It's always, it starts at one end, but it doesn't really end at the other. It's a constant balance between the 3. It's online marketing, it's online ordering, and then successful delivery in building economy through delivery. And that is where I end my presentation. And I really hope that this has been useful to you. And you're welcome to ask questions.
Thanks, Heather. If you could put your camera on.
Sure. Let me do that. I'm back. There you go.
There we go. We can see you. Yes, well, I think it has been incredibly useful. You're absolutely right. And I think the panel appreciates the fact that you've clearly gone through the statement of issues, you've thought about this before coming to participate, and I think it's a rich presentation that does traverse a lot of the themes that we're battling with. Maybe if I can just start with a few sort of clarity questions. I mean, as you went through your discussion, sometimes you were a bit cryptic about sort of your other brands, and I just wanted to understand when you talked about, you know, not just your Buzz platform, but when you've got other brands on other platforms, are these restaurant brands on delivery platforms, or are you talking broader in terms of e-commerce or other platforms?
It's e-commerce. So we've developed 6 brands that we're hosting currently on Uber, and hopefully, Mr. D, if they would allow me some entry, and they cover different retail lines. I don't mind sharing it all. The first is a pet food brand called Fancy Paws. The other is the Corner Cafe. There is one that has been in operation for some time now called Bring Bry. There is Snappy Baby, which is a baby brand. And Best Beans Coffee Co. is currently in development. And Sweet and Giftly is our 6th brand. My mission is to develop these brands to replicate on multiple platforms by, again, in the same way as the Buzz Delivery Network, providing a business model to small, medium enterprise, and teaching and developing them while utilizing an actual business plan, and guiding them practically through the steps that need to be taken in running an online business.
So if I can just clarify, so I mean, these are products you put on and they're retail products, but it's also part of a process for you of demonstrating how the platforms can be used to promote brands and develop them for other SMEs.
That's right, yes. And the reason being is, very few people understand how the platforms can really benefit and leverage and provide access to SMEs. So as much as we speak about the barriers and the downfalls, one needs to consider the fact that there are benefits. It's just when we start to move away from the balance of utilizing these platforms for our sole purpose of existence as business. It's where the platform starts to run your business and becomes the bigger player or power player in your business versus you running your own. And I think this is where we go wrong as small business, or even as big business, because I've seen the bigger brands do the exact same thing. They fall into crisis when they start to realize that the bigger portion of their business, customer base, is owned by another entity that they've never signed up for as a business partner, yet has such control over their consumer base. Again, it's a matter of defining what is business. Is business owning your assets only and your product, or is business owning a customer base? And I think this is where the question comes in around competition, is who, and I'd hate to say, because nobody really owns a customer. You don't own a customer. So it's such an open debate at this point in time. It's how much influence you have of that customer base. And with technology and algorithms, we're talking about a virtual reality here, and something I think very few businesses understand, never mind small, medium enterprise.
And Heather, I think you've given us a huge amount to digest, and we won't have the time to go through all of it, but let me just pick up a few things. In a sense, what you're going to is the issue of dependency. And
Yes.
And we even heard last week in the e-commerce platform that in French law, there's a sort of legislation requires that if a small business becomes dependent on a platform, there's an obligation almost to ensure that is addressed, and businesses try to ensure that no one using their platform becomes dependent. That's obviously not a factor here.
Okay.
And some of your strategies, I think, you land well in terms of that reminding firms that this is not just their only business. And some of the strategies you're talking about is almost selecting a platform to ensure that you might control the customer, own the customer. But I think the reality maybe is that for many there isn't that choice. I mean, I find it interesting that you've gone exactly to Uber Eats for your product launch. So how does that change? I mean, it's all good to say, look at the terms, understand them. Now, we would probably encourage the same, but do people really have a choice in affecting that? As you found, those are the rules.
Yes, actually, you're absolutely right. There's one of two choices you have. And that's simply, I think it's that first to market concept that was highlighted in your terms of reference. There are really two players to select from at this point in time. And speaking to the restaurant industry, it's very interesting because the only way I think to provide fair competition is to allow more players into the space. However, businesses are hesitant to allow more platforms. So that in itself is a barrier to entry because they don't want the complication of having to deal with more than one service provider, for instance. So there's that mentality in business. But I think that's more of an education than anything else. It's a fear of technology and an understanding of technology. The future of business is algorithm. It's data, and it's understanding the future and applying it now.
So just in terms of a solution-based approach, if I look through some of the things you've raised, such as who owns the customer, what access do you have to the customer? I mean, maybe from your perspective, are there more concrete solutions you would propose to the panel in terms of what you've outlined in your presentation that may change that level of dependency and may also, I suppose, allow the SMEs more of a stake in the overall consumer transaction? So maybe if you can go to specifics if you have thought through that.
Yes. Understand from these aggregators, the policies behind the algorithm, the policies behind the access, the logic that they apply in the functionality. It can be taught to business. I'll give you an example. Facebook, you have many marketeers who have learned by experience how to manipulate the algorithm criteria by tweaking certain functionality. It's become a science. The same with these platforms. There are functionalities, firstly, that are not exposed to everybody and only to some. And that for me is a concern because that allows certain people access to certain parts of that market that others don't have access to, which could be viewed as unfair.
Sorry, Heather, can I just interrupt you? What are these functionalities that are only available to some?
I'm not sure if this is something that I could fall into trouble with, but there are certain functionality, because I'm a person who prompts and pushes and finds the necessary means to answer and solve my problems. I've attained the privilege, I guess, of having certain interactions with one of the platforms that has allowed me access to certain functionalities that they've not made public to somebody else, but the functionality exists. I know I'm sounding cryptic, but if you'll forgive me, it's not, I don't want to get them into trouble. I just want them to be more transparent about it. So I think for me, it's about policy. It's about transparency of standards, and it's about how are they regulating these standards. Because I think it's a bit hypocritical to say, well, we have these standards. We won't allow you as a non-retail front to come onto my platform. but I can't tell you why. I can't tell you what those standards are that need to be met. And who is actually observing these standards? Who's out there that's assessing these individual businesses that are seated on the platforms? I haven't seen any.
All right, we can take up in an in-camera session, confidential session with you, some of the details of that. But I think
Sure.
the panel would want to find out more. So transparency is one angle, and I suppose it's a degree of transparency also on the ranking algorithm. You've got
Yes.
some of the tools, and I would also hear from some of your comments that and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the understanding the contracts is another thing that you say businesses don't fully understand. It's a lot of terms and conditions in legal language. And what we've seen, I mean, what this probably resonates a bit with, we've seen in Europe a platform to business regulation that came into effect, I think, in 2019, which focuses on transparency, plain, intelligible language, but on something like the sort of language, do you think it's beyond plain, intelligible language in a contract, but actual proper education before someone joins of exactly what the rules are?
Yes, I do believe that. And also just, sorry, having worked in software development, the moment you make a development on one side, it impacts on other sides. And sometimes the development leaves gaps for exploitation of a particular market. And I don't know what standards are applied from IT strategy or development strategy perspective to say, well, what gaps are left? I know it's getting a little bit too technical now. When making these changes, I suppose you can't ever avoid this, but what strategies are in place to avoid these gaps? Does that make sense? Or am I babbling a bit?
No. You're, I mean, maybe if you could give an example, if that would help us.
Okay. So in developing a software, there's certain logic that needs to be applied in different ways or different functionalities. If I make a change on one side of the system to apply a certain logic for a functionality, it's not always viewed holistically in as far as how it may open up a gap on an entirely different function on the system that enables a gap for exploitation. Does that simplify it? So it's making changes on one end to satisfy a need, but opening up a gap on another, because one cannot always foresee what is to come. And obviously that's where you have upgrades and changes all the time. But by then what's what and who and how. So, just how those gaps are closed.
Yeah, and I think many of the platforms will say they don't want to reveal too much about the algorithm because that could lead to manipulation. I mean, I suppose what you're saying is the savvy players do find those gaps to manipulate, and then they may be closed later.
Yes.
Or there may be gaps that are made available to some groups and not others, and they're aware.
Correct. Thank you. You simplified that very nicely.
Maybe it's because I have no IT background.
Okay. Layman language.
Can I just ask, I mean, just more maybe going back to restaurant delivery. I mean, you said you started with a franchise many years ago, and then you made a switch to Buzz. Can you just tell me, I mean, is that franchise, are you a franchise of someone else, is that delivery service still going?
I'll be honest, I don't know. I've not kept sight of it. I've been focused on my own mission. also, they have moved just after the separation. They'd moved out of my operational space, which is typically Pretoria. And I have branched out into Johannesburg, and I've not seen them around. But it's quite possible they might still be operating. I am aware of others, for instance, Appetite and Order In. I think there were 5 players that started initially. It was your Appetite, your Order In, your Delivery Extreme, your Mr. Delivery, and I think there was one other. There's one other I'm forgetting. And we were all kind of playing in the same space, probably in just different regions or different spaces. And very few of them are currently operational, and it's very unfortunate.
So in the past, there was space for, the landscape allowed space for a number of players. I mean, as you say, Appetite is closed. I don't think Order In's offering a platform for consumers anymore. Delivery Extreme, your other one. So you said things changed with Mr. D receiving money to digitalize and Uber Eats coming in, and that consumed every piece of the pie, I think you put it. So can you just quickly outline what changed and how it consumed the pie?
Yes. I recall at the time all these players that I'd mentioned to you had come together when they realized that Uber was coming to town, and to say, well, how do we work together as a, it wasn't even an industry. You can't call it an industry with only 5 players. And that dissolved very quickly. It would seem that competition outweighed the appetite to work together, to form a nice collaborative. But there was, in the beginning, a lot of money spent, obviously, by Uber and Mr. D in their marketing drives to download the apps. And at the time, people were intrigued by the concept, but they were also excited by the status that came with it. The thing is, with a mobile app, it secures space on your mobile device. And shortly thereafter, every time Dick and Harry wanted to have an app on a mobile device, but there's not always space. So that in itself is a limitation or a blockage to other competitors. But there was still a slipstream, and we could still operate within that slipstream as long as we kept a niche market. And locality and local business became your pitch. We also kept the call center, which was, you can still speak to somebody for those who are hesitant to adopt the technologies. But over a period of time, as they started to convert the consumer mindset, they became more powerful. And they had a bigger bargaining power with the restaurant industry, who then closed the gaps for the smaller players to keep these restaurants on their books. I think it was only through relationship with my restaurants that they allowed me to continue business in their space, even though I couldn't generate as much turnover. And then, yes, we slowly but surely got squeezed out. But now we're dealing with a whole different aspect, and that's where your franchise brands have their own e-commerce platforms. And that came about just after COVID showed its face in 2019. And they started to realize, oh, heck, we have to consider some kind of an e-commerce. I'm sure they had for quite some time. It just was escalated. So now we have other larger brands competing in that space to try and take their market back from these entities. And that created, I suppose, more competition. But I don't think that they've had as much traction as they were hoping. And that's simply invited the competition right into their home by co-branding and keeping the turnovers that are generated through Mr. D and Uber. So again, just filling in those gaps with their own e-commerce platforms and having the marketing budgets themselves to push and drive their loyal customers, if that helps.
No, certainly that helps, and I mean the marketing aspect seems to be a prominent feature here. And there's two elements, it seems. I mean, you've talked to it's expensive to reach consumers on your online marketing channels. I assume that's search and potentially social media as well. I mean, is that not a reason why SMEs end up with the platforms? Because it is expensive to try. And are they, I mean, in your experience, are you able to get visibility or discoverability on both the search, but also, I suppose, a Play Store or an App Store from the app side?
The view of your smaller businesses is that they're actually jumping onto the platforms for exposure. So sometimes not even necessarily just for the functionality that comes with being on the platform, but rather being exposed to and with the brand because of the strength of their brand.
And I just wanted to also understand, I mean, you know, some may say, well, look, consumers winning here, massive spend on promos in delivery. Why do we not concern ourselves? Uber Eats and Mr. D are battling it out, and maybe Bolt gets involved. Isn't that a win for consumers? So what's your view in terms of, I suppose, ideally what this world should look like and why?
It's funny because I'm reading a book by Mike Welsh. I don't know if you know of him. He's a futurist. And I unfortunately haven't yet finished it, but I'm very excited to get to all the points. But the world is most definitely, business, should I say, is based on platforms. Platforms are not going away. Platforms will continue to develop in new ways and new forms. It's how we, as businesses, are adapt to these new ways of operating. Like I said, there are merits, definite merits to having platforms. There's definite merits to algorithms. You as a small, medium business doing something manually cannot keep up with efficiency and effectiveness without technology. It's just access to this technology. To own the technology is to own your business, or to manage your business within somebody else's technology is really to just make use of a market. So I think the way we view business just needs to change, and how we manage the risk of our businesses. I think the concern here is there's two different perspectives. One is the consumer. Is the consumer happy? Well, I don't know so much. If you look at the feedback on Facebook and Hello Peter, you know, and as far as service delivery and price, I think the consumer is very unhappy. But they still use it, and that in itself is evidence that they want to, and they're willing to spend for what it is, the service and the product that they're deriving. And I think that's going to continuously grow as it has. I don't think that's going to change. So clearly there is a consumer want, demand, and need for it, which is great. And it's opened up markets. It's just a matter of, well, now, how do we allow others into that market to provide the consumer with more options? Because at the moment, the customer really has one of two options.
Yeah, and I think that is, I suppose, what also the platform inquiry is looking at as well. I think many of the themes you've touched on in terms of SME participation, smaller platforms, choice for consumers, are all certain things that resonate with our statement of issues. I think, Heather, we have run out of time. I'm sure we could go on for much longer, but we do have the opportunity to engage you outside of this public hearing as well. So I want to thank you thank you for the time and also the effort you put in to clearly prepare for this participation and structure your thoughts, and that's been of a lot of benefit to the panel and the technical team. So thank you very much.
Great.
And I think next we have one of your franchisees, Sisters on the Move.
Oh, wonderful. Yes, that's great. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
We're just waiting for our next participant just to come into the virtual room. On in terms of SME participation, smaller platforms, choice for consumers are all certain things that resonate with our statement of issue. I think, Heather, we have run out of time. I'm sure we could go on for much longer, but we do. Next. Welcome. I think you're watching us on YouTube, which is giving the feedback. Welcome. I think if we could just get the camera corrected for our Sisters on the Move.
Okay, camera. Oh. Can you, how does?
Yeah, that works. Is that Ms. Batutukile Mkhunu?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Welcome. We have you as our participant, and maybe you can introduce your team, and then I believe you have a presentation for
Yes,
the panel, and so you can share that with the panel and the public, of course, because we are streaming on YouTube, and then take us through the presentation, and we will then potentially ask some, well, we will be asking some questions following that. I do love the name, by the way, so that's already caught our attention. But I'll hand over to you.
All right. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much to the panel. Good afternoon, or good day still. We appreciate the opportunity and the platform provided to us. Hopefully this session will yield positive going forward within this field. So I'll just basically jump into who we are as Sisters on the Move. My name is Batutukile Mkhunu, and I'm the CEO for Sisters on the Move. With me, I have Azande Mkhunu, who is the director and founder of Sisters on the Move. And on the line, we have Israel Chirinda, who is our creative director.
Can I just ask the creative director just to mute, just so that I think we're getting feedback.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if you can just go to the main slide about Sisters on the Move. We basically 100% Black-owned female youth company, and we've had 3 enterprise development programs in Gauteng afforded to us, which afforded us an opportunity to provide canteen services to various corporates. So due to the pandemic, we had to sort of close shop due to staff members having to work from home. And we then ventured into the food delivery space, which allowed us, we had contracts with people like Uber Eats and service level agreements with Buzz Delivery. So we were able to venture into the food delivery space. So for the purpose of this meeting, because Sisters on the Move does have various elements that they offer, is the having specialized in confectionery and culinary services. Looking at the business model, if you can take me to the second slide, because I can't control it myself from this side. Okay, the next one, please. Basically our business is a delivery service that performs on demand and scheduled delivery service for restaurants, retail outlets, and the general public. So one of the provisions that we offer is we provide customers requiring delivery of hot food from restaurants to their homes or offices. So basically this is done via an online ordering platform where menus of all stores we deliver for are located. And where there is a need, then the customer will then direct a submission to the restaurant, who then receives the order and accepts the order, and then we all have it on our platform, and we then contact the drivers. It's then directed to the drivers via the driver's delivery app, and then they collect from the nearest driver or whoever receives the order first, then is directed to the restaurant to collect the food, and then directed to the customer to deliver to the client. So the second provision is that we provide a service on behalf of restaurants to their customers, where this is where we offer an outsourced model, where we station drivers as restaurant outlets on a permanent basis, and then we manage the deliveries on behalf of the outlets. The third one of our service provision is providing restaurants with their own online ordering page, which is then the restaurant have a link on our online platform where they can use the internal marketing tools to market to their customers, also including our link to make use of the orders. So once we receive that, then the system, the delivery requirements are then fulfilled from that point. We also provide delivery services on behalf of retail stores, where we have a database of scooter drivers, and from that pool, we're able to deliver the service or offer the service accordingly. We also provide delivery services to businesses and general public, which we then also use probably the same system. We provide delivery service to individuals, and businesses require deliveries that require deliveries within our catchment areas. So the technology that we use, we lease the software platform from Buzz e-commerce solutions. So they assist us a great deal in terms of coaching. They run the back end and the technology related requirements, and they basically provide us with a platform that displays our brands, our graphic, our look and feel. So we're able to portray our business from in the public or to customers. And finally, in terms of the billing model, where we source profit from, it's derived from the following revenue streams, which is a percentage profit generally 15% of the cost of the profit of the product delivered, which is paid by the restaurant or the outlet. And we normally come in like cheaper than that of the competition, which is generally between 20 to 30%. And to take us through the fee structure, I'll hand over to Azande, and who's gonna just take us through the fee structure as well as the challenges that we've faced in the market.
Good day. Thank you so much for this opportunity once again. It is greatly appreciated. I'm just going to swift through the fee structure. It is our IP, so yeah. But our traditional fee structure is it gives our drivers stability, and it also gives them time on their hands, especially during off-peak hours, to invest in themselves, whether it's to read or study, and it gives them basically a monthly basic salary. As soon as the system is regulated, we are looking into looking into things like the UIF and leave days. However, currently they are getting 4 days off per month. So this is how our fee structure is put in place. We give our drivers about 6,000 to up to 6,800 per month, depending on experience. And we are aware that renting bikes on a weekly basis costs 600 rand. So we do give them an advance on the 600 rands for the rental of the bikes together with the fuel, which assists them a great deal. We also give them 300 rands fuel per week and data to communicate with us. They also receive 5 rands per delivery, which with every delivery that they do, they get 5 rands per meal. And we negotiate up to them receiving a free meal on a daily basis with our outlets. So we are roughly looking at about a total per week 939 rands, and monthly is about, that's just the take home of 5,100. However, we've had a few challenges, even getting this whole deal together. So can you please move to the next slide, where I'm going to explain all the challenges that we've received and the challenges that we've faced in the market. And we've discovered that the delivery service industry is not regulated, and there are no unit standards for the delivery drivers at SETAs. Access to funding opportunities that are specific to online initiatives have been a struggle. Ourselves have applied to numerous institutions, and finding South African qualifying candidates with a Code 2 driver's license or own their own bikes has been also a huge challenge in that part. And Uber Eats and Mr. Delivery drivers get paid based on the number of food orders that they deliver. And the money that they make is usually just a little bit more than working on a working permanently on a restaurant. Can we move to the second? Thank you. The drivers with experience usually get paid more, and they're not willing to let go of working with Uber Eats and Mr. Delivery for a permanent post. And predominantly non-South Africans are not interested in the stability that we offer, because obviously they're in the country to come and make money, and basically Sisters on the Move is more focused on making sure that people are stable and are able to feed their families, as well as also invest in themselves. And finding suitable candidates to represent our brand. We've had challenges with that in terms of hygiene, because Uber Eats and Mr. Delivery, they don't know the drivers, they don't work with them. So we interact with them, and we see them. So like finding proper people to actually represent our brand has also been a very huge struggle. And having to hire out scooters on behalf of the drivers impacts on the increase of our costs in our business. And funding for new innovative business such as online delivery lacks recognition from government funding platforms. We've applied to institutions like NEF, the Department of Tourism Transformation Fund. We also got we didn't yield any promising results there. And that was because we say that we are in the fourth industrial revolution, but still we are just not being recognized as SMMEs to be able to access funds, to be able to move forward in our business. Black women have little and close to no recognition at all in the delivery service. It's like I say Black women specifically because I feel like there's a little bit of disrespect in there. They would lie and say, we coming, we'll be there on time. And it just becomes a mess. Sometimes they don't even pitch to work. And it's like sort of there's something behind everything. It's like sort of a syndicate cartel situation, and that, but we can't really put our finger to it. It becomes a huge mess. However, we do have solutions and recommendations as to how we can be able to solve the problem. And I think I'll hand over to Yisrael to be able to discuss the recommendations that we've put together. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Yisrael, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to actually present ourselves so that we may be able to highlight situations that we're facing within the industry. I hope you guys can hear me.
We can.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so at this moment, I want to describe first the way these industries work from how we have intercepted them. You first are dealing with the restaurant, then you're dealing with the platform, and then you're dealing with the delivery person. So now in a normal setup, you normally go into a restaurant and you're dealing with the chef, the waiter, and that's how the thing unfolds. So now what happens is that the delivery person is the person that actually does the waitering, so to say. But most of these people who are doing who are doing the delivery and are basically, they're not educated about the brands that they're working for. They're unable to, they lack communication skills. They're unable to have accountability for whatever they're delivering. Why is this so? It's because Uber Eats and Mr. Delivery do not seem to have a training program that allows these drivers to go through a training skills and transfer program that allows them to actually be equipped with enough knowledge to be able to communicate with customers. When it comes to accountability, safety is also something that we need to think about, because to allow someone within your home, I feel that most of these drivers should be certified by CETA, for example, because if they're certified, the customer who orders on these platforms is able to take that certification in terms of maybe there's a serial number attached to a specific driver. They are able to go into the database of CETA, for example, and they're able to see if this driver is certified. Regulation can help because at the moment you have so many foreign nationals actually dominating the delivery business. And the issue with that is that you have so many young South Africans that are without jobs and can take these simple jobs. These are simple jobs that anybody can do. The only thing that you need to be involved is obviously you will need a scooter and the ability to be able to actually drive the scooters, which will be attached to a license, So what we have thought about is that would it be a bit more simple and a bit more better if there would be a regulation and a certified system that allows every driver that delivers, especially in the food industry, to be certified by us as a standard department by government. For example, maybe CETA can do that. And then what would happen is that in that way, young South Africans can be allowed an opportunity to actually engage within the system. Because what this allows young people from disadvantaged backgrounds is that they're unable to access the education of being able to actually acquire a license due to funds, obviously, and they don't have these scooters, that I think Azande mentioned in terms of some of them being hired out, being hired out. So I think the problem that we are facing is that it hinders young people from within South Africa to be able to partake within these jobs. These jobs can serve as a way of young people actually getting their first jobs. And as Sisters on the Move, what we decided is that what if we create a skilling program where young people are able to now go through our program where we teach them first how to have communication skills, how to have more accountability, and how to actually deal with the hospitality business. Because when it comes to people being happy and the complaints and the complaints that are made by customers, I think most of them derive from the fact that maybe there's a pricing problem. But I think also the other problem is that some of these drivers do not have the necessary hygiene. Some of these drivers lack communication skills. Most of them are not South African, meaning that even to communicate with your driver in your home language, that also can be a problem, you know. So what we think is that maybe if we have a database of all these drivers actually being recorded by the government, in that way, it allows the government to also know who is actually involved within these like services, you know. In terms of involvement, then excuse me a bit.
We can still hear you.
Yeah. Okay. So now, what we thought about is that if maybe all drivers receive a certificate that they've went through a program, you know, just like how a waiter would go through a training program through a restaurant to understand the brand and to be able to serve customers. I think that the drivers serve as the waiter, but then the drivers are not something that most businesses, especially these big businesses, are not actually focused on the drivers. They're focused on their own platforms. But now the issue is the drivers actually do the end job. They are the end experience. That's where the final experience that the customer has is with the driver. So what we thought about is that perhaps maybe there needs to be a training program that allows these drivers to be more informed and to actually have a formal way of actually being presentable. And maybe if most of these drivers are not servicing a lot of restaurants at a time, because the problem with that is that there's a lack in convenience in terms of the time that it takes for a driver to deliver a product, because some drivers would actually make detour deliveries where they would deliver 3 products from 3 different restaurants at the same time, you know, and that can impact the experience for the customer, you know. And what we have also realized is that there's no accountability in terms of when the complaints are made, who does the customer make the complaints to? If something goes wrong with the order, or if maybe they have a complication with the driver, does the complaint go to the person who owns the platform, the big companies that own the platform, or does the complaint goes to the restaurant? And in my experience that I've had in laying a complaint, I've realized that there seems to be a detachment between the platform owners, consultancy service, and the driver. You know, the drivers work as what do you call this? They work as freelancers. They don't actually are owned by Uber Eats or Mr. Delivery. They work as freelancers, so accountability is quite less. So we thought maybe if drivers belong to some sort of a department, like what you have with the taxi association, for example. I know it's a bit complicated to go that direction, or for example, what you have with the security guards in South Africa, where they are regulated and they are certified by a certain department. If maybe all drivers are certified, then it allows it allows the industry to be more safe, not only for customers, but also for the restaurants to be able to present their products in a proper way. So if people are given the opportunity to actually to actually go through this program, like especially young people, if we give young people an opportunity to enter the market by giving them these courses, obviously if we are backed up by relevant investors, we're thinking maybe if government gets involved, then we can actually create spaces within townships. Because the other problem that we have is that the reason why these delivery services do not give access to townships is because there is a lack of drivers. Most of the drivers that we have are currently within urban areas. And the reason why you find these drivers within urban areas, because if they live in these urban areas, and most of them are foreign, because foreign nationals, most of them actually live in urban areas. So the people who live in townships are disadvantaged and are unable to enter the market. And I refer to also the small businesses, like people who have small restaurants within townships, who actually can have access to these services if the drivers were actually living within those areas. So what we thought about is that, what if we can train as many drivers as possible and allow them access to actually have driver's license, working with the license department, and also have a way to actually purchase these scooters. Then we can rent out to them, And then it will decentralize the whole idea of having Uber Eats or Mr. Delivery controlling the whole market. Because in this way, what it will do is that it will help young businesses within the township areas to be able to also have platforms that allows them to actually have delivery services. Because I think maybe when we speak about the market, we only focused on the urban area. And I think the expenditure right now that we have, it's under potential. Because if we have enough drivers that are able to be in townships, then what you do is that you are spreading the amount of market that is available, not only to Uber Eats or Mr. Delivery, but small players that want to get involved. Because there are young people who are actually developing some of these apps that deliver things. It doesn't only have to be food, it can be even parcels. But then if the only issue that they face, I think, same thing as Mr. Delivery and Uber, the only reason why Uber and Mr. Delivery are unable to be around township is because there's a lack of driver. Accessibility isn't there, doesn't exist. So now if you create accessibility by recruiting more drivers, because most people are focused on the platform themselves, but then who delivers this food? Who actually is the end user and who actually gets the products to the end user, the customer. So people are not thinking about the drivers and nobody seems to be focused on the fact that these drivers also need to have skills that maybe a waiter would have, So to be able to communicate products and to be able to take in complaints if there is any complaints, and to be able to communicate with the relevant business owners and and to be able to communicate with the relevant business owners and the customer to create a relationship. Because right now there isn't a relationship between the customer and the platform. The platform is only virtually, but then the relationship is created between the driver and the person who actually orders online. So these relationships are not that strong because most of the drivers are random. They are not centralized within an area, meaning that it would be better if I go to a restaurant, it would be better if I'm served by someone that I like most, or someone that I'm often seeing, someone that I see often, that I feel comfortable, they know what I want to order and stuff like that. But I think if you take it on the virtual side of things, the person who delivers my goods, I would love to see a familiar face more often. And with Uber Eats and Mr. Delivery, it's impossible to get that because these drivers are random. They work when they want to. And sometimes access to products is so difficult because some drivers will decide not to work a specific day. And that would actually, that would actually change the frequency on how many orders can be made within that specific day. I don't know if that makes any sense. If we go to the last slide. Yeah, and on conclusion, I think there are so many opportunities, especially I think for young people who right now currently are without jobs, because some of these, as much as we can focus on the platform themselves, obviously they're complicated, and there's many developers that get involved and many big companies and tech companies that get involved. But the issue that I think should be raised is the fact that these companies should at least invest in the end product, which is basically the drivers themselves. There needs to be some sort of attention given to drivers, so drivers can also have access, as my colleague mentioned, like UIF and stuff like that. But then at this moment, it's such a random business where even Mr. Delivery and Uber are also struggling to actually get drivers within certain locations. But then if these drivers are developed and or maybe if we have a company like ourselves that are willing to take on young people and train them within the business and turn them into drivers, then we'll be able to feed into the market, and we're able to feed into the demand that's needed by people. For example, if we create a program that allows us to have maybe 20 drivers per cycle, let's say on a 4-week course, we will be able then to have young people who are able to earn at least 5,000 Rand per month. That can bring a big difference because it can help some of these young people be able to save up for their studies if they want to continue with their studies. And it can help them also to have skills skills within the hospitality business that can help them deal with human resource, PR, and all those kind of things. So what we do is that we will bring in these young people, and we will educate them not just on the fact of the delivery business, but on the business as a whole, so that when they interact with customers, they are able to be affluent, and they are able to be on point at all times. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's Mr. Shurinder, as I understand. Thank you for the presentation. And yeah, and I think, you know, certainly, as you put it, I think you're going to make us think as well about the delivery side. Maybe we've also been focused on the platforms too much. So I think it's a very welcome presentation and a thought-provoking one, and an impressive pivot, I suppose, in the business following the pandemic and having to respond to the crisis. I'm going to pass over to my fellow panel member, Ms. Doris Tsepe, to start the questioning, and then there may be further questions from myself and also the technical team, who I think you're familiar with.
Thank you, James. Good morning, Mr. Shurinder and the two Ms. Mkhunus. Welcome, and thank you for your time. It was a very interesting presentation, and as James says, just the area in which you're concentrating. I just wanted to start on questions of funding. I mean, in your presentation, you do say that you have struggled with funding, and I wanted to find out from you, there was a lot of mention of public institutions. Where did you go? Have you to try and source funding? Have you looked at some private funders like venture capitalists? Have they looked into your business? Because it sounds like an interesting business, and so we are. I don't know if you would have seen last week in our session. We actually did speak to a number of organizations who deal with funding, particularly venture capitalists, and we just want to know, where are you looking? Are these people engaging with you? And who have you spoken to, and what the responses are? If I could start there. Thank you.
Okay. Can I just take over this one, and then you guys can add on? Sure. All right. We have applied with NEF, the National Empowerment Fund. We actually created a business plan and a very, I think, impressive initiative that we wanted to do. So we've applied at Department of Small Business. We've even went to Itala Bank. Most responses that we got were mostly about they not funding online businesses. Yeah, that was the major one. No, there's no funds for online businesses. They don't do online businesses.
And I think just to add on to what Azande is saying now, there's also been opportunities in the platform, the food business space. However, they also look for take-off agreements where we should have had already contracted with outlets or retails, like in order for us to be able to get funding from them. But that has seemed or proven to be a problem as well, because without the funds, we obviously can't launch what it is that we want to do. So having sort of a pre-agreement or pre-arrangement with an outlet sort of puts us in a disadvantage as well, to be able to approach and continue with the services without having the financial muscle for it. So I think, in terms of the venture capital, what we've also applied for, and that we've also sort of are getting sort of like a recognition, is private companies from like things like your programs, where at the moment we are with one of the programs, Tembani, who is willing to mentor us and assist us, but it's not really about like giving us what it is that we want in order to fulfill our goals with the business. However, it's just allowing us to venture into this business space with confidence and knowing exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
So we maybe if there is ones, I mean, we always welcome more funding opportunities that we can make use of, so that you might have to assist us with.
Yeah, and I think our business plan is it's in all the institutions, the government institutions. You name them, it's there.
Okay.
Thank you, Azande and Batutikili. Just, I mean, I just wanted, so just to understand the last bit, Batutikili, that you were speaking about. So you basically saying some of the private funders are willing to work with you more on programs of mentoring and not on providing you with working capital. Is my understanding correct?
I think so. We just got into a program as such about a month ago. So they just did a diagnostic on our business, and we did sort of highlight the kind of business that we want to run, and the eventuality is for them to be able to assist us with funding. But it's just because we have already gotten into the industry, so it's a time factor to say it's an 18-month program. So we have to go with the process from the beginning, and we are pressured of time in terms of what it is that we want to achieve within this industry going forward. So it's like something that is pressing for us. So those programs are available, and we are making use of them. However, it's just the time frames.
Do you mind just explaining a bit what type of programs they are, just so we understand?
The ones that we have, it's an international guaranteed fund at the moment, where they've chosen specific organization within. It's an international fund, so they've chosen within various countries in the Southern Hemisphere, and we part of the companies that were chosen. I think the top 50 companies that were chosen. So they have started the process with us, and we are in like sort of negotiations with them. We also have a meeting with some of the investors that will be looking into it. So it's a process that still needs to unfold. So I can't really like specify much if ever the funding would be like capital or in terms of monetary value that we need to get from them. So we're not 100% sure of the outcome as yet, but we're hopeful.
Yeah, we're hopeful, and I think something that will be off, and that will be off a little bit, because our program, this specific delivery one, focuses mainly on South Africans. So if we are looking into international funding, that also could be sort of a little bit of a problem.
Thank you. So I mean, it is interesting in our discussions with venture capital industry, we were finding out that particularly for SMEs, there was a lot of international funders willing to engage here in the country. And so I think it's something we need to engage more. But just so I understand, so you saying this program you're in, that's the one where you've started with a diagnostic, and what comes out at the end of the 18 months could be an investor coming in or not, but it depends on how they view your business. Am I correct?
Yes,
you're correct.
Perfect. And so your issue is you are already a business running currently with a need for working capital as we speak, and therefore you would like access to that working capital currently, as opposed to an 18-month waiting period.
Yes.
Yes.
As in right now.
Yes. No, I understand. Thank you. Sorry, I wanted to just, one of the people we spoke to just on this was, or reference was made to the SASME fund. And I think it would be very interesting for you guys to just engage with them. I don't know if you have heard our conversation with Safka, and I think it is online on our YouTube channel. If you could just listen to that and just engage with some of those people. I just think it would be an interesting conversation for you guys to have as well. But just moving on the funding discussion, I wanted, one of the things you spoke about is that you tried your own app. And I wanted you to just talk to us about that journey. What was your experience? What were you trying to achieve with your own app? When did you start? What were your challenges, and where are you at on that journey? Is it something you're still wanting to do, or have you just moved on? Thanks.
Yizzy, do you want to take that one? You.
You are on mute, Yazrel. Thanks.
Sorry about that. Yeah, the one with the app is that we had a business plan that within it we did a quotation for an app, and when we did a quotation for an app, we actually received a quotation of 10 million rands, which we believe was a bit too much. I mean, in order for the app to be in comparison with Uber Eats and Mr. Delivery, you know, the app developers then decided that it would need that kind of funding for it to actually be on that level. Because what we did is that we had a business proposal, which I don't want to talk about here because it's an idea that can be easily done by someone else who has the funds. But then we had a business proposal that actually wanted an app for it to work, and it focused on mobility in terms of where our restaurants are able to be anywhere at any time, you know. And then the reason why we're focusing on the delivery part of this, and I want to emphasize this, is because I think there's a lot of people, or there's a lot of players within the platforms of apps and development, because that's the future. That's where the virtual world is going. Everybody is going towards that direction. Except the problem is that there's an infrastructure that needs to be built for that to actually have a service in the first place. For example, you build the platforms, but you need the drivers to do the work, you know? And I know in the future you will have automated vehicles that do the work, but for now, there's human capital that can be used. But then the human capital is not, it's not trained to actually access these jobs. Because I think the big players, what they do is that they focus on their side of things, and they link themselves to this restaurant, and they take a percentage, and all they offer is a platform. And we understand that these platforms are important, but what about the people who are actually conducting the business from the ground up, you know? Because without these delivery personnel, you do not have a business at all. You know what I mean? There is no access to the market. There's nothing. It's the same reason why you don't find Uber Eats and Mr. Delivery in townships, where in townships there is your KFCs, there is your Nando's and all those kind of things. But then now you cannot have a delivery app that helps you sit home within your house in a township and actually order something. Why? Because there are no drivers within those environmental locations. The reason why there aren't any drivers is because no one is willing to invest in that department, you know? So we thought maybe if we could take our efforts and invest within that department instead of working on an app, we can then maybe invest in the department of actually creating drivers for the industry. If we can create drivers, then all our drivers can be now certified and can be linked on a database where even customers can have access to who these people are, rather than having someone random come into your home. And when you have to complain, you don't know who to complain to. So if we create these drivers and we are the department that actually works with this, people can actually lay those complaints through us, and we can take those complaints and actually deal with them through restaurants and stuff like that. Same way as how a person sitting in a restaurant can call for a manager. I think that part of the business has been lost. It's like the human entity within these platforms have been lost. Everything is just virtual. Everything is done over the phone. But then we feel that we still need to have that human interaction in order for the brands that are involved, and by brands I'm referring to restaurants that are involved, for their products to be presented properly, you know, rather than us going on a random journey where things are, where we build a platform, but then we don't know who's gonna service the platform, you know. So in terms of the app, we believe that maybe if we have most restaurants develop their own apps, that way it will help open up the market. Because what you have right now is that Uber Eats and Mr. Delivery dominate the market. They have more capital. Not only that, but they give a high percentage to drivers, which if I'm giving a monthly stipend to a driver, let's say 5,000 Rand, as pointed out, Uber Eats, because they work on a consultancy basis with these drivers can regulate how much they get. They can basically choose how much money they make, which I think it's okay. But in terms of actually the service itself, the service suffers, because what if a driver decides that today they won't work? You know, it means that I won't be able to access my favorite restaurant because now this driver, there are 10 drivers who decided that today is going to be an off day for them. Do you know what I mean? But now if you have drivers that have a roster, that work for a certain company, that have a UIF, you know, that are taken care of. There's so many advantages in working for a certain company, and then we can now look also into tax. The company will also be contributing in that manner. So now what we have is that if these drivers are created, we are able to deploy them even in townships, where imagine if these young people who live in these townships are able to become drivers within these townships. So they're working around home and they're able to also service their community. And in the meantime, it actually reduces the unemployment rate of these young people who just maybe came out of school. And we all know that the situations in South Africa are quite tough. But then these virtual platforms allow there to be new jobs like these. These are simple jobs. They don't need any kind of extended course, going to school for long extended times or anything of that manner. But then I think most of us at this point right now, what we're doing is that we're focusing too much on the platform and the competition on the platform. But then the problem is
Hi, Yezreel. I think he's frozen.
I'll just quickly add in terms of our experience with the app. While easy, I'm not sure what the problem is that our experience with the app, we actually went through like intensive development process, because we had to get people who are willing to work with us on risk, with the hope that we will be getting funding and be able to fund for them. So it's a very intensive, highly specialized app that we developed, and it's actually similar to how your Uber Eats would be. And we are aware that Uber Eats spends like a lot of money, probably over 250 million, I think, dollars on their app. And our app, as the more features we add onto the app, so we started with having it at 5 million rands, and the more we added the features that we needed to make the lives of the customer easier, is the more the price went up and up. We eventually had our whole business plan sitting at 58 million, where with all the requirements that we had on it. So our experience is there. I was just lying there, and it's sad that it's not being used or it's not working.
And it's such a brilliant idea.
We're still hopeful that one day it will still be used, and we would still want to actually own our own app, you know, because the current softwares that we're using at the moment, it's of great help through Buzz Delivery, and they are willing to be with us like through until we are independent to running our own system and being able to fulfill the goal of our business within this industry.
Yeah, and they've been training us as well.
That's where I was going to go to say that is probably the reason you then went with Buzz to use the software.
Yes.
Thank you. Can I just go to, I mean, the main feature you are concentrating on, which is drivers, and just for clarity, to just understand the nature of your relationship, I'm not clear at the moment what is the nature of your relationship with the drivers, even in any of the 5 models that you were speaking about. Do you want to just explain that a bit?
Okay, well, our relationship with the drivers is okay. Just from the experiences we've had, we interact with them, and then we have a service level agreement and a contract with them, Sisters on the Move and the drivers, that stipulates the conditions and the working. It's basically a working contract, how we expect them to be, how we expect them to sort of their attitude and how they handle themselves and hygiene perspective of it. So we then from a contract-based, it is a contract-based relationship with the drivers, and that's how far we interact. It's just based on that. And we also obviously we have them, the minute we have the drivers, we have them on WhatsApp, and we communicate on a regular. Like, we have to keep contact, we have to keep track on what is happening on the ground, and yeah, that's the kind of relationship we have with them.
So is it essentially an employment relationship, or is it an independent contractor but with clear service level terms?
We'll say it's an employment contract. You know, it is an employment contract.
Yeah.
Earlier, when you spoke about the 4 days, was about providing them time out so they could do other function, either they could study. Would that mean they could also provide delivery service to other platforms, for example, or is it an exclusive employment contract?
Our employment contract does stipulate that they specifically would be focused on the outlet that we have stationed them at. And the 4 days leave is just for them to be with their families, because the delivery service, I mean, restaurants work Sunday to Sunday. So they get worn off. So we have like a structure where we have like maybe 4 drivers at a time. And then if the 5th driver is not there, there's not going to be much like sort of discrepancies. And we also allow them to just take time off to go and rest, so that they enjoy the work and they don't feel under pressure. And it's also good for them, because whether they're off sick or whatever, they still get their salary at the end of the day. It's not about them having to work hard or like to constantly keep on going to find deliveries, because they have to make money. So they still get their salary regardless. And the 4 days is just for rest.
And for the studying and the reading, that was mainly just for the off-peak hours, because obviously if you're working for one outlet, you're not constantly like working all the time. So there is a bit of time for off-peak hours that you're not really doing much.
Thank you. Could I just on the drivers, I mean, I found your presentation on the sort of investment you envisage with drivers quite important, and I just wanted you to take us through what sort of training do you give to them prior to them being stationed either at an outlet or providing the delivery service from the on-app orders. Just if you could just take us through that investment.
Okay, so basically, we'll sit with the drivers before they start for a day or 2, and just to take them through like the contract. The contract has all the and the don'ts, things that how you approach a customer, how you talk to people, how you carry yourself, how you dress. And so we take them through, whilst we're taking them through the contract, we're also making them understand our perspective of running this business. We actually try and make them understand that we are business partners. So if you're not like pulling your weight from your side, and then we also suffer, the restaurant suffers. So we try and instill like the efficiency and effective work ethic. We talk to them like proper partners. And if, well, in this instance, it hasn't been easy, because even launching the whole process that we have to run in KZN, it hasn't been easy. It's been a real struggle to find drivers and interact with them, because the ones with experience, they already know everything, so they would like be telling you that no, that doesn't work. This is, you know, so you end up having to constantly deal with personalities. So with our training program, it's like specifically people that we have identified, or people that have shown the interest in this process. And then we take them from that training process as well. So, and the training is just basically about that, because there's not really much. And so we would want people with at least a matric, people who are able to read and write, people who are able to sort of interact and speak English, or speak other vernacular languages like fluently so. And although that's one thing that we haven't really been focused on, since close to none delivery partners or drivers are South Africans.
Hence, we want to do it futuristically, in a way where we partner up with driver licensing departments, or other SMMEs that own these companies, and then they're able to take on our people that we've identified and assist them with getting code 2 licensing, and so that we are able to train our own people from scratch.
I think this is an appropriate time to get to speak to that program. I mean, I think that is just a fascinating program. As you would know, one of the in the preamble of our act, one of the issues we need to be looking at is how do we develop the economy so we create more jobs in the country, and in fact specifically for South African, and one of the things we're looking at in the terms of reference of the inquiry is precisely to look at historically disadvantaged persons in the country, which would include the youth. So a program of this nature that seeks to attract young people and train them in order to get them back into the employment or participate in this market is quite helpful. I just wanted to find out from you is how have you identified partners that you will be engaging with? Have you started? Where are we at in this program? Who are you planning on speaking to engage to actually kickstart the program? And how do you plan on getting these young people? How do you plan on interacting with them and attracting them?
I think, okay, just to go back to your previous statement, I'm sorry to do that. I wanted to say something. Like, one of our main objectives as Sisters on the Move is to actually really contribute towards creating employment, to assist government towards creating employment, as well as just assisting towards enhancing the economy. And we have been looking at this particular platform as one, because we also run other businesses on the side. So this one, we felt like it was one project or process the way we can actually contribute to the country the way that we would like to contribute. And like, we've been driving around looking at the post offices, seeing people who who stand around waiting for 350 the whole day. And we realized that even if you go and approach people there, you just identify people that you think can be actually really accept this 6,000 rands a month, then obviously they come here for 350 rands every month anyways. So this could be, we thought it's one platform that we can actually just like start with, because we've had a lot of interactions with people in townships and rural areas that we feel, oh my gosh, we can hire all these guys and they are really into it. But it's just the whole process, which has been quite hectic. But in terms of the approach, that's the kind of approach that we're looking at using. Also using social media platforms. We have already a database of drivers from the social media that we posted, Facebook, I think Twitter, and our WhatsApp social statuses. And we've received like massive numbers, and of which is like a pool that we can tap into when we're ready to start with the program. And also I think Easy, if you can maybe just explain the partnership process that we would be using in order to implement this project.
Okay. Okay, sorry about earlier, load shedding. So the network around this area just went down. So I had to switch to another, what do you call this, network to get this working. Okay, so yeah. So what we have with this program is that we're thinking that maybe if we partner up with a licensing department, or maybe people who do driver's licenses, like your driving schools and whatnot. But then if that creates too much backlog, we can actually go straight and work with the licensing department. Maybe if we're helped by one of the government institutions to actually help us do that, where we have a sort of like an academy of some sort, where we actually breed these scooter drivers. And I don't think it takes like a long time. It will probably take it's a 4-week course, for example, where within that 4-week course, not only are they taught about the delivery business, but the human skills, the ability to be able to communicate, hygiene and all those kind of things, especially with coronavirus. Some of these drivers, the hygiene level is not on par, because as I said before, they work for themselves. They don't work for Uber or Mr. Eats for Mr. Delivery or Uber. They work for themselves because they work as consultations. They work on a basis where they choose when they want to do the work. But then if you have people who are dedicated to actually fulfilling the service, it makes the customer experience much more better. So maybe if you can work with the licensing department to get this done, and maybe get some educators that are good in human resource to come in and actually inform and actually teach some of these young people before they go into the industry. We're thinking perhaps maybe if we receive help from the educational department itself, if they have any resources, they can actually conduct these skills transfer programs. Because it's just about your ability to be able to drive a scooter. I think if we are going to put you into this industry or market, you should be able at least be given an opportunity to expand your horizon and how you think about it. Maybe you can contribute something new that maybe someone else has not thought about. But for you to have those kind of thoughts, or maybe those kind of way of thinking, you need to be given educational tools for you to be able to expand your thinking capacity. So I'm thinking maybe if the licensing department helps us with this in order to get the licensing, maybe the educational department is able to give us people who can transfer skills which can help these drivers to be more informed.
We're struggling to hear you, Yezreel, I think.
Assessing skills that allows them to not only become drivers for now, but in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
I think the network is not great, but thank you. I think we got the gist of all what you had to say, and thank you very much for that. I just wanted to ask, do you know if there are other organizations that are involved in this in trying to train drivers, particularly delivery drivers?
No,
No.
not regularly.
Okay, thank you. I think the one area I wanted to discuss with you is you've spoken about your plans to expand into what I refer to as underserviced areas. And I just wanted you to speak a little bit more on that. Which areas and why do you want to go there, and what would be the plans? Obviously, this is a public platform, so I wouldn't want you to speak about your confidential information. But if you could share with us.
Okay, what we've done is we have actually a list of restaurants that we, in especially townships and some semi-rural areas, what we've identified or realized is that in these townships and semi-rural areas, there is buying power. People just don't have access to things easier than they of the people living in the suburbs. So you find that there's a lot of people who are staying at home and getting paid well, but they just choose to go and stay at home because maybe they need to take care of their parents, or they need to like just be there because they don't want to pay rent somewhere else, you know, which is fine. But you find these people not having being able to maneuver easily, or either they have the cars or they just want also to have the privilege of being able to open up an app and order just by the Shisanyama down the road, or Shisanyama that they can't walk to, but it's also far to get it's also far to get to without a taxi or without a car. So we've identified those where we feel like, you know, there's big establishments within the township areas, but it's just that the bigger establishments do not go to those areas, and where they depriving them the convenience of the service itself. So from that note, we actually felt like, you know, we've asked a couple of restaurants if they would like such a service. They most of them are interested in having it because it also increases the number of orders that they get as well if there are delivery services around there. It's just that they can't also have deliveries happening because it's another business on its own.
Yeah.
So I think that has been the interest, although it's something that needs to be really tried out in depth.
Yeah.
You know, we can't really say for sure that it's big business in that sense, but there is a gap, a huge gap.
And just to add on to what Tutu's saying is that we've also identified on our business plan and the program that we've put into place is that it also empowers them. So there's also an empowerment element for these township restaurants as well that will be of benefit to them as well. Just like
how
a revamp, for example.
yeah, like how restaurant partners work with Uber Eats. So it's the same process. They become restaurant partners, and the idea was to also just make use of the chefs within those locations to also get into their own businesses in a form of dark kitchens where they're going to be able.
I think we've lost you there, Batutugile.
Yeah, I think we lost them. Must be the network.
Yeah. And it was getting very interesting because that was the area that...
No, actually, what she was saying is,
Yes.
what she was, I don't know if you can hear me clearly.
I can. Oh, they're back. They're back.
Oh,
Thank
they're
you.
back, okay.
Thank you. We had lost you there, but so if you could just continue.
I think we lost them again.
We
I
lost
don't know if
them
I should continue.
If you could, and I'll tell you where they were going that I was kind of interested in was the issue of the types of restaurants also that you're interested in the
Yeah.
township, because
Yeah.
is it just your bigger chains, or are you actually
No, no,
looking
no.
at businesses of the people within the township? So if you could just add that, thank you.
Yeah, so basically what we thought about is that it would be better. Basically what we thought about is that it would be better if maybe we give access to even someone that has a kitchen at home, who's a chef and who can open up a business, is able to enter the market. This is just opens up the market completely, because not everybody has kind of like a setup, like a brick and mortar setup that is gorgeous, beautiful, beautifully branded and big. You know, some people have the skills to actually create these services. However, they have minimal structures to actually be part of like the market. So we thought maybe even if someone went to a culinary school and is a chef and lives in a township, but they have access to a kitchen, they can cook. What can happen with those kind of setup is that you can maybe have government inspectors check the environment if they're suitable for actually conducting a business, and maybe receive some sort of compliance certificate. And then when they have that, they can then apply with us to be on our platform in order to, what you call this, in order to use their skills to actually sell food. So this is not just about your KFCs within the townships or your chicken lickens in the township, but it also includes small businesses, small restaurants that are not identified as franchises, so to say.
They're just, I'm very sorry we're running out of time, and there's just so much to explore with you guys, and I think I've taken a bit of time. There were just two issues I wanted to discuss with you. And the one you raised it in your presentation was the issue of gender and how the market views you. And I wanted to understand, is this from a funders? Is this in your interaction with restaurant? Is this on your interaction with the platforms themselves? And how does it play out?
I think with the gender thing, basically, I think what we were focusing on is the drivers themselves.
I'm very sorry, Yazril.
Yeah.
I was I
No,
was
okay.
You're not
expecting.
the ladies,
Yes,
asking the
yes,
ladies.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think what we've experienced on the ground, talking to drivers themselves, is immediately they, they see Black women talking about having them come and work for them, which is like something that they don't really are they to, or maybe just the way that they take us, like they don't take us serious. They don't take us serious. It's like, oh, okay, we're going to come. They will meet up with us, or some they don't pitch. And we think mostly the reason why we're saying it's Black women in the industry is because of our own experiences over and over, and what we have encountered, not just with the platform itself. And we see that with our female white counterparts, like our partners that are white females, they're actually taken more serious. Are able to listen to them more than they can listen to us. And it's like we sort of need to be with her for them to listen to us. So it's we know that it's that thing, and it happens a lot. And then we find ourselves having to be firm all the time, having to actually just try and keep on proving ourselves that we are in serious business, guys. Can you just listen to us? So that has been with a lot of other things, especially as entrepreneurs that we've experienced as Black women specifically. So we feel that our country is not there yet in terms of how they have accepted women within the business spaces to actually just run things.
And it's so easy for them to refer to us as like sisters, or listen, my sister, something like that. It just becomes like such an easy thing, of which I don't think they do that to.
And another thing, it's also like quite. We mentioned earlier that it's sort of run like a syndicate or a cartel of some sort, because they they have a tendency to like sort of scare us out. Like where you talk to certain ones and then these ones will come and say, if you take those guys and then this is not how we work. The money is too little. You will hear from us. You know, things like that, like unnecessary things that just go on, but that you realize that it caused mainly because you are a Black woman.
Thank you. I mean, we don't have time, but I would be interested. I mean, you seem to have, with all those challenges, managed to still continue on this journey and are even looking to try things out. It would be quite helpful and useful, I think, for us as a panel, if you could just talk to us about some of the strategies you have employed in order to be taken seriously when that happens. But I don't think we have time right now, and I think we would at some point, I think the technical team would be able to contact you and discuss that so that we can have that as part of our recommendations when we write our report. The last thing I wanted to ask you, you speak about partnering with Uber Eats as delivery partners. And I was just interested in that is, you know, are we in a model where we're going to see platforms or delivery platform services almost being consumed or absorbed by the bigger platforms, and what does that relationship look like? And I just wanted to understand from you, is that you don't want to compete with them and therefore partner with them, or do you see a different model of a relationship and what that model is?
I think because we were running canteen services and specializing in culinary and confectionery, we were contracted with Uber Eats as a restaurant partner. So what we were doing is we were offering food services to Uber Eats clients via their Uber Eats delivery service. So we actually got to understand the business whilst we were doing that a lot. So it's not, no, we're not looking into partnering. It's not, we just, it's going to be our brand, and then rather we compete. We compete in the same space.
Yeah.
Thank you from my side. I'm just going to hand over to James, and thank you very much. This was very interesting.
Thank you.
I've just got one question because of time. Just to respond, Batutukile, to that last comment. I mean, what is the risk that once you've developed the drivers in those communities, that the big platforms move in, take the drivers, and this is a way to sort of, I suppose, push you out as your own app?
Okay, I think our delivery program is a program. It's a 1-year program. So where we find that suitable people would be in the program for that year, where we then offer them the scooters to use for that specific year and experience the service. And then after a year, they move over to whatever thing that they want. So it's like sort of a cycle that we're going to get in people into a program so that there's no, and the contract is going to be specific to say they work for this specific organization. So, and it would be in breach of contracts for them to work with other organizations or other companies that are competing in the same space.
Well, thank you. And I think, you know, you've certainly brought a different perspective for the panel. And I think what is interesting is that a small business such as your own is also thinking about the challenges of the country and your fellow citizens, and a potential win-win situation that obviously provides you with a business, but also provides those in your community with opportunities, both as restaurateurs or just kitchen owners who have talents in the chef area, and but also those businesses probably beyond restaurants, and also the drivers. So I think, Patutukile, Azande, and Yazriel, thank you very much for coming before the panel. We appreciate the time you've spent. And I apologize on behalf of ESCOM for the challenges that they've posed to you and us.
Yeah.
But we will be in contact with follow-ups as Ms. Tsepe indicated.
All right.
We do have Driver, who was an earlier victim of rolling load shedding, available. I am going to request just a few minutes break because we are going to have to run over the schedule, and so we'll take a few minutes break, then we'll resume for about 35 minutes. going to resume with driver foods, and I believe we have Priven ready available. Maybe our guests can put on their videos so we can see who we have in the room.
Oh my God, I wanted to put the video on. Hello. Hello.
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Okay, I'm not too sure why.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Reddy. We understand you were load shed earlier, and that has posed the challenges. We are meant to end this session in 10 minutes, but we'll extend it for another 20 minutes. But maybe if you can just...
Sorry, my network is like really bad with this load shedding.
No, that's fine. We understand the challenges at the moment. So I just wanted to see if you could, in the first 10 minutes, maybe outline quickly driver foods, as well as some of the reasons why you wanted to come forward and participate in the public hearings. I do want to remind you that you broadcast live on YouTube. This panel is public, so if there's any confidential information, then if you can ensure that you don't traverse that while we're in public session.
Okay. So I'm actually talking, in this hearing on behalf of Mr. Reddy and Karen, because they couldn't make it. So they've just asked me to read through the document that I did submit to you guys. And the concern was obviously the other two competitors that we have in this business.
Then please go ahead.
Okay, so Driver Foods would like to lodge a complaint against Uber Eats and Mr. D for abusing their dominant position in the market.
So please go ahead.
Sorry, can you hear me?
We can, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, like I said, Driver Foods would like to lay a complaint against Uber Eats and Mr. D regarding dominant position in the market.
I think we have now lost you. I think we've lost our participant. I think the panel's going to reschedule Driver Foods because I think it would also help if Mr. Reddy himself appeared before us rather than just have a statement read out. So we will engage with Driver Foods this afternoon and find an available slot for them to come and appear again. So with that, we're going to close the morning session. Just to remind you, we will resume at 2 o'clock with Uber Eats, and after Uber Eats, we've got Quench, and that completes our program for today. So we will see everyone at 2 o'clock.